Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. Today we're going to be talking about Mardu value engines. Now these aren't going to be singular cards I'm talking about here. These are going to be interactions and how certain cards interact with certain strategies, when you can employ these value engines, and how these value engines actually lead you to winning the game. Sometimes your strategy is not the thing that's not working in your deck. Sometimes you just need one solid value engine that you can consistently get off, and that's going to lead you to winning more games and making that deck you've been trying to get consistent just work consistently. So let's go ahead and click on that whatnot link and claim your free $15. Get 10% off all of your Tolarian Library proxies whenever you use code DT for D. My friends over at Baron of the Dice are having a 15% off site-wide sale until the end of October. So now's the time to go pick up those awesome playmats and deck boxes that match. These are high quality and overall just unique. I'm really just in love with the look and feel of these deck boxes. When it comes to these guys, yes, they sponsor me, but I am a customer first. So I had to let you guys know, go get everything while it's 15% off until the end of the month. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is something I've been on for a long time, and that is Goblin Engineer value. Goblin Engineer is a 2 CMC creature that says whenever Goblin Engineer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card and put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Then he has an ability where we can tap to sacrifice an artifact and return target artifact card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So the thing that we want to do in Mardu is the first thing we grab is our Cursed Mirror. Cursed Mirror allows us to copy a creature whenever it enters the battlefield, so we sacrifice an artifact, bring back Cursed Mirror, copy our Goblin Engineer, and now we can throw another artifact in the graveyard, and 9 times out of 10, I'm probably grabbing Brass's Tunnel Grinder. Brass's Tunnel Grinder is a 3 CMC artifact that says whenever it enters the battlefield, you can discard any number of cards in your hand and draw that many cards +1. So now we're getting card advantage every single turn. Now you do kind of have to alternate here. One turn you have to reanimate something like your Cursed Mirror, and the other turn you have to reanimate something like your Brass's Tunnel Grinder, but the fact that you just get to passively get card advantage every single turn off of just sacrificing one artifact is amazing. And this also does just allow you to tutor up any important artifacts you need from your deck and throw them directly into the graveyard. Another form of solid card advantage you can do with Goblin Welder loops is Altar of the Wretched. This is a 3 CMC artifact that says whenever Altar of the Wretched enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, draw X cards, then mill X cards, where X is the creature's power. Notably, you don't really have to be playing a power matter strategy to utilize this effect. As long as you have decent sized creatures and you're trying to reanimate them over and over again, sacrificing a 3/3 to draw 3 cards and mill 3 cards can essentially be just flat out drawing you 6 cards in the right deck that is able to turn its graveyard into their hand, like a lot of Mardu decks already are capable of. So definitely something you want to only include in a specific strategy, but if you're trying to get die triggers off, this can be a solid card you can include in these Goblin Welder loops. And when you think about the overall package, you just have to include your Goblin Engineer, your Cursed Mirror, and then your Brass's Tunnel Grinder. And then out of nowhere, your deck has a consistent value engine. Then if you want to include your Altar of the Wretched, again, that's one other card, but all of these cards work by themselves as well. Goblin Engineer, you're happy to see. Cursed Mirror is going to be a mana rock that also just copies the best thing on the battlefield. And then your Altar of the Wretched and Brass's Tunnel Grinder are card advantage if you just draw into them naturally. So not only does it give your deck more card advantage on its own, it also just lends itself to turning into an engine, and it can find itself off of one card, which is Goblin Engineer. Something that's very, very easy to put in your deck and just works consistently. If you want to make this even more consistent, you can use something like Sword of Hearth and Home. This is an equipment that says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from green and from white. It also says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to one other target creature you own, search your library for a basic land, and then put both of those cards back onto the battlefield. So you basically get to blink a creature every single combat step, and additionally you get a ramp with lands. So again, if we find this with our Goblin Engineer, we can blink our Goblin Engineer every single turn to tutor up all of our other artifacts, and this is also going to ramp us. Another thing I like about Sword of Hearth and Home is that also then makes it easy to include things like Stoneforge Mystic and Cloud Midgard Mercenary. Now, I do like playing these in primarily equipment-based strategies, but honestly, If you just have a couple of equipment that are really important to the strategy, like I'd say 3 equipment, it's really cool to just jam Cloud in a deck, and then you just search up Sword of Hearth and Home, and then you keep blinking Cloud, and then he's able to find all of your important equipment. And then again, throw in Goblin Engineer, and it kind of does exactly the same thing there. So there is other ways to make this super consistent, but I wouldn't shove them all in a deck, just every single Mardu deck. You do want to care about a little bit about equipment, and then additionally, you do want to have ways to bring creatures back from the graveyard or decent sized creatures to sacrifice, depending on it. But if you do shove these all in a deck, again, you're just going to end up with a very consistent value engine that is able to get off every single game. And even if you wanted to add to the consistency, you could throw in both of the recruiter effects that allow you to tutor up a 2 power or 2 toughness creature, and that'll either find your clouds or it can find your Goblin Engineer. So now you have 3 different cards that start your engine and turn it online, and that just becomes insanely consistent. And that's just the first thing we're going to talk about in this video. Now, we're not going to be talking about the Smothering Tice. This isn't about individual cards, but that is still a very good card that is a value engine within itself. The next thing I really want to talk about is I've been noticing a strategy becoming more and more prominent and easy to get off, and it's kind of just busted at the same time. And I'm talking about a strategy where you're trying to deal at least 1 damage to each opponent each turn. The reason this is super powerful is because there is now 5 different Grim Hireling effects in Mardu color. Grim Hireling is a card that says whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you get to generate 2 treasure tokens. Now, the majority of these only generate 1 treasure token, but the fact that there's 5 of them makes this strategy extremely consistent. So that means if you're playing a token deck that generates a lot of evasive tokens, it just becomes a very easy value engine to shove in every single one of these Grim Hireling effects, and now you're generating up to 3 or 6 treasure tokens depending on the treasure token generator per combat step. And that just becomes a way to generate, again, a ton of mana by doing what the deck already wants to do. And this can even bleed into generating card advantage as well. Whenever you talk about including cards like Timna, she's a 3 CMC creature that says at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you may pay X life, where X is the number of opponents that were dealt combat damage this turn. If you do, you get to draw X cards. So essentially, not only are we generating 3 treasure tokens, or 3 to 6 treasure tokens per player hit, additionally, we're drawing 3 cards. Brino works kind of similarly. This one, you can only draw up to 2 cards because of the way it's worded, but it's still very good in this strategy. It's a 3 CMC creature, 1 generic, 1 white, 1 black, it has flying, and whenever a player attacks 1 or more opponents, if that opponent has more life than another of your opponents, that attacking player draws a card, and you may put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control. So you're going to draw 2 cards off of the other 2 players that don't have the most life total. Again, not 3 cards, but that's still an insane value engine, and it gets even more crazy whenever you talk about including extra combat steps into these strategies, because now it takes your potential to draw up to 3 cards per turn, makes it 6 cards per turn, and then the treasure token generation goes insane as well. And the treasure token generation can even help you cast these extra combat steps. So this is another very easy value engine to slot into your decks. I did want to mention some cards that just easily utilize these strategies, just in case it's not super obvious. If you're running cards like Adeline in your deck, this is a 3 CMC creature that says Adeline Resplendent Cathar's power is equal to the number of creatures you control, and whenever you attack for each opponent, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. So if you're playing cards that generate tokens whenever they attack and they're attacking multiple opponents, this strategy just becomes very good. Your myriad strategies as well can utilize this kind of shell, if you will. And they even have Enoch Leader, which is basically another version of Adeline, which I think is very good. 2 CMC creature, whenever you attack with a creature and or commander, for each opponent, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking that player. So again, another creature that allows us to hit every single opponent at the same time. Now, before we talk about our 1 card value engines, which we are going to talk about a couple of them, I want to talk about Mill, because Mill is one of the most consistent ways to get a ton of cards into your graveyard, and then once those cards are in your graveyard, again, it's not hard to get them out. So we're going to talk about Mill for a second. Altar of Dementia, honestly insane. You do want to kind of pair this with, again, strategies that utilize big creatures. I also like Burrogoyf and Overlord of the Belmerk. These are 2 cards that have been overperforming for me. Borogoyf is a 3 CMC creature with Death Touch and Lifelink, and it says Borogoyf's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that +1. And then it says whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you get to mill that many cards, and if you do, you get to put a creature card from among them into your hand. So this is allowing you to get powerful card selection while still getting your mill off. Overlord of the Belmork kind of does something very similar, and it also has that appending ability, which means you can cast it for 2 CMC, but it's going to not be a creature for 5 turns. You still get the ETB though, or you could just straight up cast it for 5 CMC, which is what I do the majority of the time. It says whenever Overlord of the Belmork enters or attacks, you get to mill 4 cards, then you may return a non-avatar creature card or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. This guy's a little bit more flexible because it doesn't matter what you mill. You can get any creature from your graveyard, so even if it was already there, you can just grab it and put it into your hand. This makes it a little bit more consistent than the other things. I will say Ripples of Undeath has still been an all-star 2 CMC. It says that at the beginning of your main phase, you get to mill 3 cards, which again, in the right deck just says draw 3 cards every main phase. Kind of insane. And then for 1, we can even pay 3 life and return one of those cards to our hand. So it is just straight up card advantage and just powerful card selection in the right deck. Out of the Tombs has never stopped being broken. If you guys have not played with this card yet, I highly suggest it. Not only is it a very, very powerful card advantage engine, it can also turn into a combo game ender in the late game. It's a 3 CMC card that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to put 2 Eon counters on Out of the Tombs, and then you get to mill cards equal to the amount of Eon counters on it. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8. It racks up very, very quickly. And then it also has this other busted ability. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, instead return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you can't, you lose the game. So now we don't lose the game for decking ourselves, so you kind of get incentivized to deck yourself, and it's even a combo ender because all you need is a sack outlet and you can get infinite die triggers, infinite ETBs, and infinite LTBs. And in Mardu, you're gonna have a way to win the game there, whether it be an ETB that does damage like Terror of the Peaks, or you can just have a Zulaport Cutthroat and it says whenever a creature dies, you know you drain your opponent. So there's plethora of ways to win the game, especially whenever you're talking about a Mardu deck and using Out of the Tombs. So not only, again, consistent mill engine, it also just does allow you to win the game if you make it late and mill your entire library. Terra is also another one I've been shoving in my Mardu decks, the ones that have a typically lower CMC curve, which I think is just a lot of Mardu decks in general, especially when we're talking about an aristocrat strategy. She's 1 red, 1 white, 1 black, and it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, mill 2 cards, then Terra gains flying. So not only does she have evasion, she just is going to mill you 2 cards every single turn without having to attack or deal combat damage, which is just a very consistent form of mill. And then it says whenever Terra deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2, and when you do, return target creature card with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Notably, this just circumvents CMC. As long as that creature has 3 power, we can reanimate it here. So that's when you turn your mill into card advantage, because now you're turning straight up cards into actual value on the battlefield. This is the value engines we need to be looking for whenever we're talking about building our decks, and she's just super consistent. She's always going to work, and those are the cards that are just going to make your deck more consistent. The last one I'll talk about when I'm talking about mill is Ruthless Technomancer. Again, you kind of want to pair this in the same decks where you're running Altar of Dementia because you do kind of want higher power creatures, but honestly, I run this in decks that just generate treasure tokens as well because he's also a powerful reanimation piece, and I think a lot of people forget about that. This is a 4 CMC creature. Whenever Ruthless Technomancer enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, create a number of treasure tokens equal to his power. And then you can pay 3, sacrifice X artifacts, and return target creature card with power X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. X can't be 0. So this is another card that circumvents CMC, and he's just going to reanimate people based on their power instead of based on their CMC. But what's really cool here is, again, you can generate a ton of treasures or use him as a very powerful reanimation piece. If you're running a deck with a lot of low power creatures, he's still good because, again, we can just use the treasure tokens we're generating to reanimate all of those low power creatures. And if you're in a deck that plays a lot of high power creatures, his role is going to be a little bit different. Yes, you can reanimate creatures, but 9 times out of 10, you're slamming this guy and generating 10 treasure tokens. Now let's get on to some of the more game breaking cards that I've just had overperform Rakdos the Muscle. This card is insane. 2 CMC, 2 black, and then 1 red. Has flying, trample. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile cards equal to its mana value from the top of target player's library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards and use mana of any color to cast those spells. So not only is he color fixing, additionally he just allows you to look at a ton of cards. Whether that's your opponent's deck or your deck, you get to choose, which I really like here. And then additionally he does protect himself because he has an ability to sacrifice another creature. Rakdos the Muscle is going to gain indestructible until end of turn. You do have to tap him though. Another card that is just overperformed for me is Archivist of Ogma. Now this will get touted as kind of a CEDH staple, but this is just amazing and casual as well. It costs 1 generic, 1 white, it has flash, and whenever an opponent searches their library, you gain 1 life and draw 1 card. How many fetch lands are we playing against? Every single fetch land is going to draw you a card and you have 3 opponents. If you play against people with greedy mana bases, put this in your deck, it's going to do the thing. Even Cultivates, Farseeks, you are going to see a ton of cards off of this guy, I promise. Just try him out for a couple weeks. If he doesn't draw you any cards, you can leave me a hate comment. Braids Arisen Nightmare, another one that's just very good in those decks that utilize bodies and have bodies. A lot of people don't like sacrificing their creatures unless they're playing a dedicated deck that wants to sacrifice their creatures. So just having a 3 CMC creature that allows us to sacrifice a creature and make our opponents make a choice, hey, you can either sacrifice a creature or make me draw a card, is just going to put them in a rough spot. And then if you're ever really hurting for card advantage, you can have Braids sacrifice a land, and then 100% your opponents aren't going to want to do that, and you're just going to get to draw 3 cards. So this is a 3 CMC creature that can potentially draw you 3 cards every single turn, which again, the value here, kind of crazy. Zergal Helm Smasher is another card that I'm quickly realizing is just really dumb in these Mardu decks, because any deck that generates enough tokens and wants to sacrifice those tokens should be running Zergo. He says whenever a creature token you control leaves the battlefield, you get to draw a card if it was attacking, otherwise each opponent loses 1 life. So not only is he an aristocrat effect, additionally he draws you cards, and last but not least he even generates tokens with his mobilize ability. Whenever this creature attacks, create a tapped in attacking 1/1 red warrior creature token, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So the creature sacrifices itself, but if you have a way to instant speed sack something, that's going to be at least 1 card draw per turn, while being a solid way to end out the game with enough sacrifices. Again, this guy has been doing a lot of good things, but you do probably want to pair it with the strategy that does care about going wide with a ton of tokens. If you do that, you're going to set yourself up for success. That's going to end it for today's video. Be sure to leave a comment if you want me to flesh out other value engines and other colors, if this helped you out any, or if this video is just not something you're looking for me. I like to be really receptive for the feedback you guys give me. With that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys in the next one.